Hey guys, it's Greg Towne, host of the podcast Go Time, where every week I sit down with some of the top leaders of their industries and professions, and they share with you how they became the trendsetters of their industries. It's Go Time. Well, hello everybody. This is Greg Towne, your host for the podcast Go Time. And today I actually have, today's a new milestone for us today. Everybody else we've had guests on here and stuff, I've had a personal connection with in one way or another. And today is somebody that I've actually followed through for a while now, somebody that I almost feel a little bit of a kindred spirit with because we're both real estate brokers. We're both in the training world. We're both published author. And I have with us Mr. Jack Cotton, author of the book, Selling Luxury Homes. And I think, Mr. Cotton, this is actually how I first discovered you. I think it was through your book. And then I started taking some of your virtual classes and stuff. And we've been connected within that aspect. But thank you for joining us today, Jack Cotton.
It's a thrill to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, well, thank you. We have a lot of realtors that will follow us and listen to our podcast and watch our videos and stuff. Right. And we also have a lot of people in, professional level services. And before anybody that's not in the real estate world wants to, click off or anything like that, one thing I could definitely say with this book is there is a lot of information here of anybody wanting to work with somebody in the high net worth community or kind of an upper echelon community. So before anybody tries to click off and stuff, definitely stay connected here. Jack, I love hearing about how people get started in entrepreneurship, what led them into the world of entrepreneurship. And I find that there's similar stories and we've also got, different paths that we all take into. So please share with us, how did you get started?
Well, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always had my own business, even from when I was a little kid selling lemonade, and I had a hot dog stand when I was a little kid. But I grew up in a small town on Cape Cod, and I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but there were times, as I'm sure there are in every kid's life, where things aren't going as great as they could be going. And at times like that, I would always retreat out into the woods, into a tree house or a fort or something else I had built, because back in those days on Cape Cod, there was so much construction. I had an endless supply of scrap lumber, and I was just obsessed with creating space. And there was something about being in my own space where if I had a bad day or things weren't going well, and I could climb up the tree and get into my little tree house and smell the smell of the fresh cut wood and see the grain of the wood being lit up by the sunlight that filtered through the loose fitting boards, slowly but surely, all would become right with my world. So I have this real connection to space, and too early to call it real estate, I guess, but it just drove me to wanting to be in the real estate business. I wasn't sure how, but anyway, I just was obsessed with it. And in high school, and finally when I get into college, I decided to become a real estate agent. And because at 21 I knew everything about everything, I did not need to work for another company first. I actually started a real estate company in my dorm room in May of 1974, which means, yes, 43 years this year for me in business. 4 decades as a realtor means I don't have to pay dues anymore because I'm a realtor emeritus now. Anyway, so it's just that feeling that people get in their house that really drove me to the business, and I still can't get away from that. When I sold my company in 2005 to Sotheby's, one of the first big acquisitions I made was to buy a tree house from California. I rented an 18-wheeler and shipped it across the country. I actually bought a tree to go with it. We set up the tree in the tree house in the front yard of my house. So every day I go to work, even today, I pass by my tree house. It reminds me what I love about the business. It keeps me grounded. It reminds me of the mission I am on to help people find that space, to help them get away from the storms of life and to reconnect with family and friends and all the stuff we do in our houses. So that's sort of the short version of how I got into real estate. It's all I've ever done. It's all I've ever wanted to do. It's not a career. It's a calling for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. And anything in entrepreneurship or any business ownership, it's absolutely a calling.
Yes.
Share with us, what was it like when you first got started? I don't know many people that started their real estate career in their dorm room. I think you're the only one that I've ever heard that from.
Yeah, it was pretty sad and pathetic actually. And, you know, after I graduated in May, what I would do is I would cold call. My college that I went to was in a very wealthy town, about 70 miles from Cape Cod. And a lot of people would buy summer homes on the Cape. And I did a lot of cold calling, trying to make appointments. And I'm not going to tell you where I got the list, but I got in a lot of trouble with it anyway. And people weren't that happy to hear from me. But so after graduation in May, my father had a plumbing supply company and he had an extra desk in his warehouse. So I actually took over the extra desk, shared the same phone number, made my own signs. You have to remember 1974, there were no computers, there was nothing. You had to type on a typewriter, you had to make your own signs, you had to paint plywood and get vinyl sticky letters and stick the letters on there. There was none of the stuff we have today. So it was even more sad and pathetic than you might even imagine. And because we shared a phone, when the phone rang, I never knew if somebody was calling about a house or a toilet seat. So it was a very, a very unauspicious start. And I guess the reason I share that with you and your listeners and viewers is that if I can do this starting from there, anybody can do this. And the biggest mistake I made is not working for someone else, was assuming that I knew everything you needed to know. So that my learning curve was very long. I didn't sell a house for over a year. My first house didn't come for over a year. In fact, it was like a year, 3 weeks, 2 days, and 4 hours. So anyway, it was, but it got better over time. And we became, on Cape Cod, we became one of the most successful companies on the Cape. We had great sales. We had the highest sales per agent of any company anywhere at the time. And it was attractive enough so that a large company like Sotheby's International Realty would want to buy my little company in 2005.
Wow. For somebody that wants to start working within high net worth individuals or kind of break into the luxury market, whether that be in real estate or their particular industries, how do you find building relationships or building connections within clients, of that marketplace?
Well, the overall concept is that you have to have a value-added mentality. A lot of people think of realtors as toll takers on the Get Your Home Sold highway. And in the higher you go in price range, people aren't going to be into paying a toll. They want to know that you're bringing value and you're adding value. And the best way to convey that is to be seen as an expert. People in the high end want to do with experts. If you talk to wealthy people, they talk about their medical experts, they talk about their tax experts, they talk about their accounting experts, their legal experts. They want to deal with a real estate expert. So you've got to develop expertise and then convey that expertise in 5 critical areas. Number 1, you need to become an expert on markets and value. What is your market like? Your geographic market? What are some benchmarks? What are things selling for per square foot, per front foot? What is the cost to build homes in your marketplace per square foot? Who are the architects of note? Who are the wealthy, well-known people of note? What's the history of the area? How long is it taking to sell things? What are the feeder markets for your wealthy area? Where are the wealthy buyers coming from? I tell people to go in and build a 2-year history of everything that happened in their geographic area to really have a keen sense of markets and value. Number 2 is you want to become an expert on pricing. And that means, how do I take that information I have about markets and value and apply it to one particular residence, estate, or house? So what is your process for valuation of real estate? I love watching those guys on $1 Million Listing when they walk into a house and they go around like this and then they just shoot a number off the top of their head. And in my experience, that is so far from reality, and that people really expect a quantitative analysis. Now, a lot of people who want to break into luxury real estate take the shortcut route, which is to tell sellers overinflated numbers for their house, to overpromise, to undercharge, and or any combination thereof to try to get in the door. But having a pricing process, I find that many sellers don't like the price I give them because I tell them the truth. But when I can relate to them, here's my experience in markets and value, and then here's my process for taking that broad information and applying it to your property. I have a 7-step process for doing that. So markets and value and pricing is number 2. Number 3 is market preparation. How do I guide my sellers in preparing the home for sale? Some people call it staging. I don't. The higher you go in price range, the less prospects want to be manipulated or played. And if you look up the word staging in the dictionary, this sort of fake, unreal, manipulation, played is a connotation that comes as a result of that. The second thing about staging that I'm not a big proponent of is the fact that you have to hire a stager. So Greg, if I'm competing with you on a listing and you talk about the great stager you have, I have to go out and find a better stager, and then you're going to go out and find a better stager, and then I've got to go call Martha Stewart and have her come out, and my whole commission's gone at that point. So I talk about market preparation, which is basically a checklist I've created based upon 4 decades of watching buyers walk through homes and noticing what makes their eyes light up and noticing what turns them off and makes their eyes glaze over. And so any agent, whether they have 5 minutes in the business or 50 years in the business, can become an expert in market preparation, and it now becomes bulletproof because you have what you have, but I have what I have, and it's unique to me. And the way I convey it, wrapping it in a story, nobody can really compete with that because they're still talking about stagers. I talk about market preparation. I talk about if you execute my checklist based upon my experience of watching what makes the eyes of buyers light up, will get you an extra 2 to 4 points of sales price. Now, if you're brand new to the business, you can talk about the collective experience of your company or your team, and we've created this checklist around that. So anyway, markets and value, pricing, market preparation. Obviously, next is marketing. You've got to be an expert in marketing, buyer acquisition. What is it that you do to market your properties? You must be seen as a marketing expert. And then lastly, number 5 is you must be seen as an expert in negotiation. And so you can do that statistically. You can talk about numbers from the marketplace and then compare them to your market, whether they're for you or for your company as a whole, but find a way to convey your expertise in negotiating, because that's often worth another 2 to 4 points of sales price for the seller.
Excellent, excellent. What with 40 plus years of experience within the industry, what are some of, when you look back, what are some of your favorite moments? When you look back, and what's the thing that puts a smile on your face that you really look back and go, that's why I do this?
Well, there's a couple of them. I'll mention 2. Number 1, the first instance I can think of was we had a very difficult sale, very difficult buyer and seller, and the guy knew he overpaid for the house. I think at the time it was like $3.5 million or something like that. And I was talking with him over the summer after he bought the house, and he said, this is the best $3.5 million I've ever invested. My son came to visit for the weekend, and he stayed for 2 weeks. And next summer he's going to get a job here in the Cape and spend the whole summer with me. It's the best thing I ever did because I've pulled my family back together again. And so that's good. And then financially, my goal has always been to get a 7-figure commission check on one transaction. And I came really close. It was like in the 900. I never hit the actual 7-figure mark in one check. But the one I did get, I forget what it was like 900 and something thousand in one transaction. That was a big moment for me as well.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine so. What are some changes you're seeing happening within the luxury market? What are you things with technology, or are you seeing anything changing?
Yeah, the biggest change for me, someone who's been in the business for 43 years, obviously he's an old geezer, right? And, for so much of my career, I was always dealing with people who were older than me and finding ways to equalize the playing field. And therefore, I had to build my perception of expertise to equalize that bridge of that gap of age. Now, all of a sudden, I cannot tell you the exact date that it happened, but all of a sudden, a lot of the buyers and sellers are younger than me, and a lot younger than me. And so a big change I'm seeing there is that the younger buyers, the people in their 30s and 40s who are buying multi-million-dollar second homes, they don't have the emotion that people of my generation have when they make a transaction. So, for example, that story I told you a moment ago about the guy reconnecting with his son, and I can tell that story, and I can paint, verbal pictures for people about, 4th of July and the whole family and the cookout and sitting on the beach or walking down the dock to catch some bluefish or whatever the case may be. The younger people in the 30s and 40s, they'll talk about, well, the data points aren't lining up. And I'm not seeing the metrics of this. I'm not seeing the metrics of this offering. They don't have the emotional connection. Like, you gotta, what are you talking about data points? Forget your data points. This is where you're gonna build memories with your child. This is where you're gonna, reconnect. You've been working really hard to attain the level of success that allows you to invest in a piece of property in this level. You've paid some prices for that, and here's where you can make up for that lost time. But it's a real challenge because they don't have the emotional connection, whereas the older generation like me, they'll hone in on one area. They want to be there because they have an emotional connection to it. The younger people who are more of the market now, you know what? If this one doesn't work out, we'll go buy that one. I don't really care. It's amazing. It's amazing to me. It's also amazing that, people in their 30s and 40s are buying, multi-million-dollar homes. And let's face it, it's an 8-week market here. You use these homes for 8 weeks when you buy them, basically 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anybody that's looking at breaking into the luxury market or, into that sphere of their industry and stuff, what are some things that you would share with them?
Well, again, I'd go back to my 5 areas of expertise and really become an expert. But the first level that I talked about was becoming an expert in markets and value is really important because you can market that expertise to gatekeepers, wealthy real estate gatekeepers. And again, this can work in any industry. I don't care if you're selling boats or cars or diamonds or anything that's luxurious. The same concept will come into play, becoming an expert in markets and value, because that's really coveted expertise that luxury people want. So once you have that expertise, you can market yourself to CPAs, to bank trust officers, to estate attorneys or estate tax attorneys, because there's 2 kinds of taxes that wealthy people really detest paying. Number 1 is property taxes, and number 2 is estate taxes. Now, in my state, you pay property taxes on boats. You pay property taxes on cars. You pay property taxes on the furniture in your house in addition to your house. So I'm not sure, every state's different, but that's how you can move outside of real estate if you happen not to be in real estate and you're listening or watching today. So as a result of people's, especially on estate taxes, wealthy people not wanting to pay any more than they have to, they oftentimes put their property into trusts, all kinds of trusts, nominee trust, charitable remainder trust, I'm not a trust expert, trust me. But anyway, one of the things that comes along with putting your real estate in a trust, however, is the need for a yearly CMA. Because every spring when you file your taxes and you put the property in a trust, and typically what you do is you put the property in a trust and you convey a certain amount to the beneficiaries every year, so by the time you're dead, you don't own it anymore, so to split your estate. And so part of that is you need a yearly update of market value, and especially in real estate, but I can see that coming into play in other areas as well. So when you can market that expertise, that you can create those CMAs, they don't have to be certified appraisals. They can just be CMAs. They just want something in the file in case the IRS asks them for it. And oftentimes, in addition to a CMA on the real estate, they want to know, they want a market analysis on the rental value. Because oftentimes what happens when they reach a tipping point of transferring the property from themselves to the beneficiaries, they start renting the property from the trust. And what they want to do is, usually, they want to pay enough rent so that the beneficiaries can collect the rent and pay the taxes and operating expenses of the real estate. So they're tempted to have a rent that's high enough to do that, and that's where the IRS comes in and challenges it. So they need something to back up that number. And that is, again, your CMA. So typically we do a rental CMA and a market value CMA. And this is the time of year where you start doing that for all these people. So if you really want to break in quickly, you would market that expertise to all the CPAs, tax attorneys to the area, because if you do that and you do a great job, it's in writing and it's documented, doesn't be fancy, just something they can put in the file, you're now making them look like heroes to their clients. And when that property comes up for sale, you're the person they've been dealing with. You've got your foot in the door. My biggest sales have all come from that. That's the long-term strategy. The shorter-term strategy is a surprising one, which is that there are a lot of expired listings in the high end, because a lot of people get into high-end real estate as an avocation rather than a vocation. And so things expire and people have connections, they have platinum Rolodexes in the high end, and they want to help, their fellow rich person, or used to be rich. Usually it's a used to be rich person, and they don't do anything to get the house sold. So there's a lot of expireds in the high end. So have a good expired program, which we can talk about today or another time if you want.
Yes.
But that's incredible. That's important.
Yeah, it is. I actually took your first tip there. I actually took that from your book, and started working with a lot. My real estate team started working with a lot of attorneys, CPAs, financial planners, and even led into last year. I got invited to give a clock hour class to a bunch of attorneys and CPAs for their continuing education.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you're getting with the gatekeepers, and give talks to a Rotary Club in your town. The whole room is full of gatekeepers. It's all people who deal with the high-end people in your marketplace.
Yeah. What's that one question you wish more people would ask you?
The one question, like clients or people?
Clients or your students, because I know you've got a great training system and stuff. Or
right. That's a great question. I haven't really thought of it. What's the one question I wish you would ask me? The question I get asked most often is when you ask is, how do I break in? Because most people sit on the sidelines of the luxury real estate thinking they had to be born rich and well connected to get into it. And so they're afraid to try because they're all afraid of the big O. The big O is the big objection. The big objection is, well, Greg, how many homes have you sold in my area? How many homes have you sold over $1 million? And when you haven't done it yet, agents become petrified of that question because they don't know what to say to it. And so we teach the only answer, the best answer, and the only honest answer that brings value to the client. But I guess that's the question. How do I get started? I have another question, though, that's guided by business. I have a question that answers all questions. Because as you know, real estate is a very personal business. And you know that there are often, there's often forks in the road. There are quandaries. There are dilemmas. Do I do this? What do I do? I mean, my agents would come to me, I've got this situation, what do I do? And, in all these real estate situations, there's one path that the agent could make more money, and there's another path where they wouldn't make as much money, and they have a quandary as a result. And so I've found that there is one question that answers every question, and so I'd always ask the agent, well, let's look at it this way. Tell me this. What is in the best interest of your client? When you ask that question, you will automatically have the answer to any other question you have.
Love that.
Yeah.
What are some great ways for people to connect with you or follow you? Is there certain social media or websites for our listeners or viewers to connect with you?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things. If you go to my website, which is simple, it's jackcotton.com, you can sign up I have a weekly newsletter. This is actually a video newsletter. And that's every Tuesday. It's free, and it's I try to do some training every single Tuesday. It's like 3 to 5 minutes long, but jackcotton.com. You can also look at my books there, or you can search my name on Amazon also and look for books there. And then I do a webinar every month on the first Tuesday, and it's ridiculous inexpensive. It should be $200 a month, but it's $200 a year.
Oh, wow.
And you can just log in, sign up for that. And in fact, if you want, I'll give you, when we get done, let's connect. I'll give you a free login for the March version of it. If you want to come in, if you want to share it with your viewers, I'll give them free access for the month of March to log in. It's called Luxury Real Estate Unplugged.
Okay.
People from all over the country, actually around the world, log in, and they ask me about the situations they're having, the challenges they're facing, and it's 100% live. And some questions I get in advance and some I don't. So it's like a hot seat for me. It's very fun and invigorating, and I usually leave all drenched in sweat, but it's a fun experience, and I'd be happy to give you access to it for the first Tuesday in March.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And any parting wisdoms or inspirations or any parting thoughts that you have for our viewers today?
You know, the real secret to any business, especially this one, is you got to have a real passion for the job and a passion for the people and a real care and concern for what is the right thing for them to do, what is in the best interest of the client. If you make that your drive, if you make that your goal, if you make that the compass heading that you're always headed for, you will be successful over the long term. And you'll be able to sleep at night as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Jack Houghton, for joining us today. It's been an honor and a pleasure to chat with you,
Thank
and
you.
definitely looking forward to next time our paths cross.
I hope it's not too long.
Yep, definitely.